Hello and welcome to the Scholar Progenium. Today I'm going to be looking into one of the more broken Drukhari tactics that has surfaced recently. I'm going to break it down in very simple detail for you guys, and then I'm going to explore how we can blunt it very easily. As you guys know, or if this is the first time checking out one of my videos, I am both a competitive Drukhari and Blood Angels player, so I can give you the inside tips on the Drukhari. Now I've got my Drukhari book in front of me. What is this broken tactic that they're using? Well, essentially what it is it's taking racks, which are a cheap troop choice. They're only 8 points a model, and they have a weapon available to them. For every 5 men in the unit, so 2 in a 10-man squad, they can take liquefier guns. Liquefier guns, they're 10 points, as I said, and they're essentially quite similar to a flamer. They're D6 auto hits, they're strength 4, they're AP -2, which isn't tasty, and they're 1 damage each. Now, if you put these in a raider, and it's open tops of course, you can fly 14 inches in the raider, blast off your liquefier guns. Obviously you've got other guns in there as well, and you know, it's got a decent reach. It does alright damage. The AP is quite tasty. It's a decent loadout, but it gets a lot worse. That is by no means cheesy on its own. The Dark Technomancer's obsession is an all-consuming obsession. So what it means is the Drukhari player will have no other obsessions. They only get 1, not 2. It's a custom trait, you see. Now, each time a unit with this obsession is selected to shoot, you can choose to upgrade their guns, essentially. And what you do is, when it attacks, the wound roll is +1, and it gets +1 to the damage characteristic. But you can't re-roll the hits. But, you know, who cares, because the liquefier gun is auto-hitting. Great. Now, what's even better is that what's broken about this is that it's an extremely powerful effect, and the racks can ignore the negatives. So not only are you not allowed to re-roll, well, that doesn't matter to them because they auto-hit, but there's a big sacrifice in that any unmodified hit rolls of 1 on an enhanced weapon, the bearer suffers 1 mortal wound. And if it's a vehicle or a monster, so taluses, that kind of thing, it would do D3 mortal wounds instead. Now that doesn't really apply to the racks, but it's like a plasma gun. If you roll a 1 to hit, you kill yourself with a mortal wound. Now they can ignore that, of course, because it's auto-hitting. So for totally no disadvantage whatsoever, they get an extremely powerful trait. That essentially means these liquefier guns, when they rock up to an Astartes equivalent, a toughness 4 model, then instead of wounding on 4s, they're wounding on 3s. They're AP -2, and they're 2 damage apiece. And as I don't need to spell it out to you, that's really nasty. Firstborn Primaris, it doesn't matter. AP -2 means you're going to be only passing 1/3 of your saves because you're going to be on 5-ups. And every fail is a dead Marine. And these things are rocking out, dropping out probably 7 hits on average per raider. Very cheap to fill out a raider. And each one, if you, let's say you're probably going to get 7 hits out of 2 of these things, and you're going to wound with probably 4 or 5 of those. We're going to fail most of those saves, maybe pass 1 or 2. On average, if you roll it out, you probably lose 3 Marines every time one blasts it out, and that is quite a lot. And then it gets even worse because there's even more broken stuff you can do with the war zone. Is it Caradon? I can't pronounce it properly. I've not got it in front of me right now. Book. So you can make this even more broken. But we won't go any further into it. The point of the matter is that this is a very nasty thing to do, and it's also something that is very cheap and available to the Drukhari. And because of their real space raiders, new faction sort of way of taking a battalion, what it means is they're no longer restricted to taking all the slots from one faction, so filling out your fast attack, heavy support troops, characters from one detachment all in witches. They can mix it all together, and so they can take these racks as their troop choices. They can take 6 boats of them, you know, relatively cheaply for the fact that you're getting 60 models, all in transports, and they're just burning through Marines. You know, that is, if you take 6 of those, that's like 18 dead Marines. It's 3 squads of Marines just cleared away. That can be most players' entire troop choice, which is, absolutely ridiculous. If you lose 16 Marines or thereabouts, 18 Marines, something like that, on your first turn, you've not got any obsec, you've lost loads of firepower, your battle plan's totally out the window, you're screwed. And this is why the Drukhari are going to, you can just imagine it, the Drukhari are just going to be rolling over tournament games, rolling over everyone, because this is like totally broken and totally achievable. And loads of Drukhari players who've been playing Covens for a long time, because Talus were very popular for a long time, they have plenty of Coven troops, they have plenty of racks. These models are built, ready to rock and roll. They've got the Raiders built, ready to rock and roll. Remember, a lot of Drukhari players have been long-term dedicated Drukhari players. They have this stuff. It's like a Guard player or a Blood Angels player or something like that, or an Orc player, where it doesn't matter what is good and what is bad, because we've got it all. We're dedicated to our faction. We're dedicated to that, and whatever has been good over time we've collected, and the longer you've been collecting, the more stuff you have to lean on. And Drukhari players, for a long time, they've been associated with this idea that their faction is very difficult to play, but the Drukhari players that have mastered it are absolutely lethal. And if you're a tournament player, this is something that you absolutely know. If you rock up against someone who has got their Drukhari tournament army ready to go, and they look like they're an experienced player who knows what they're doing, you are in for a tough battle. So considering this, and considering they've been given this totally broken tactic and they've got everything ready to go and all the experience to go with it, it's not a surprise that they're cleaning up. But it's so simple how we defeat this, and it's the reason why we're getting cleaned up and why Astartes and most of the factions are suffering is because we've abandoned a very simple part of the game and a very essential part of most armies, which is troop transports. Because of the nature of Ninth, people have been not want the transport's fallen out of favour, and because of the way damage is dealt, and because of the relative cost of transports, 80 points for a Rhino, for example, seems absolutely insane for the amount of damage it puts out. One Stormbolter, you can pay 5 points to get an extra Stormbolter. It's just not enough. And everyone in Ninth, and recently for a while, it's been, in my mind, for the past sort of year or so, although obviously it's hard to sort of really put your finger on when it started, but for quite a while we've been going more and more elite and less of the sort of low damage output units. It's been all about toughness and damage output. And there's actually a lot to be said for screening units. There's actually a lot to be said for transports. These things have always had low damage output. Your conscripts have low damage output. They're rubbish shots, and flimsy as anything. And I don't think you can even give them orders if you. It's been a long time since I played anyone using conscripts in Imperial Guard. But the point being that a lot of screening troops, they don't have the damage output, and transports certainly don't have the damage output. And so they don't really fit into the meta at the moment. But they do, the reason why you pay the points for them is they do so many things, and they offer so much flexibility. You can rescue troops with them, you can drive up, hop some guys in if it's empty, you can deliver troops, you can sit on objectives knowing that your opponent has to crack open the transport before they can start attacking troops. There's so many things that they can bring you, but people just don't take them anymore. And I've been, as you guys know if you're a regular viewer, experimenting with a bit of flesh tearers, dabbling in flesh tearers if you will. And one of the things that I've been leaning on and dusting off is my old Rhino transports. And the reason for this is the flesh tearers, they struggle with deep strike assaults because they don't get the +1 to charge that Blood Angels get. And they also don't have the +1 to advance, so they don't make it across the board as quickly on foot. So what I've been doing is I've been, in fact, taking my Vanguard veterans and putting them in Rhinos instead, which seems absolutely crazy, but it really works because they get a big boost when they disembark. They can disembark 9 inches. They're very safe when they're in the transports, and I can drive up and disembark closer than you can be when you deploy from deep strike for an assault, so I can get really close up, 4, 5, 6 inches away, and just guarantee those charges, which has been really useful. And this is something I've been doing separately to playing with my Drukhari and the new Drukhari Codex and this new broken rule coming out. This is just something I was exploring anyway and developing as a tactic. But then, facing off against Drukhari, I found that this was obvious, and I didn't face off against Rax, but something became very apparent to me, which is the thing we know about Drukhari is they come in, they hit super hard, and they need to do that to reduce your damage output in order to protect themselves, because they're so flimsy these days without their 6-up feel no pain, that any small amount of damage output that you can do will have a great impact on their army, and you can really take chunks out. So the number one priority for a Drukhari player is to rip the heart out of your high damage output units. And the other thing that they're really good at is tearing through infantry ruthlessly in close combat, with just massed attacks, and tearing through anything in combat with massed attacks. But this leads me to a very interesting thing. They have 2 jobs to do, and if you only have those 2 targets available to them, then they're going to do those jobs. What I mean by that is, if you only have your high damage output stuff and your infantry, heavy infantry holding objectives, then what the Drukhari are going to do is they're going to use their firepower to tear through your high damage output units, and then they're going to assault your elite infantry or massed infantry that are holding your objectives and tear through those too, wipe you out. Jobs are good and they're done, and they can hang around for 5 turns scoring and win the game. But if you add an extra layer, now screening, fine, absolutely not a problem, but screening is less effective against Drukhari because they can play so well, and an experienced Drukhari player can get around screens a lot of the time. But by no means ignore screening. Screening is definitely a viable tactic, and I'm not talking about the modern screening, which is having units that can deploy in advance and block deep striking units. I'm not talking about blocking deep strike bug builds. I'm talking about classic screening where you have very cheap infantry around your expensive stuff, so your expensive stuff can't be assaulted, even though that infantry doesn't really achieve much apart from just being there as cannon fodder. That is very viable against Drukhari, because all the damage that they put onto that stuff is leaving your high damage output units in place. So if they want to get to your infantry, they have to crack open your transports. But the weaponry that they have in their army, which is limited by the amount of units they have and the amount of points they've spent on it, they don't have infinite dark lances, they don't have infinite heat lances, they have what they've got. And they've got that, and they're used to using that to destroy your heavy support and that kind of thing. But if they have to use that to crack open your transports, then they can do less damage to your high output stuff, and every one of your high damage output units that survives is going to pay a massive toll and catch you up and close that gap between you and the Drukhari player, put them further on the back foot. Combined with this is the idea that they have no choice, because if they don't crack open these transports, they can't just assault you with their infantry and just clear you out. They would have to go against those transports in close combat, which is a waste of their time, if that makes sense. So what they're going to do is they're going to try and dance around a bit, take out your transports, and try and play clever, try and destroy what heavy support they can, and position themselves so they're taking as little firepower as possible. But it's not going to work for them because they are so flimsy. So you'll take them down. And what I found working really nicely, it's barely affecting my list in any way. I've still got most of my Sandguard, most of my Death Company, most of my characters, most of everything else. But what I've been taking is essentially a squad of 10 tactical marines as one of my troop slots, or 2 squads of 5, either or. And I've been experimenting with a plasma gun in each, or 1 plasma gun in one of them if I've battle squadded them, combat squadded them. And then a squad of 10 Vanguard veterans with, load out to taste, so to speak, and splitting those into 2 rhinos and using those guys to hold an objective. And it's really secure, that objective. And I've even done this with 3 rhinos, 3 squads of 5 tactical marines and 15 vanguard veterans in a couple of, I think, 3 matches. And I wouldn't go more than that at the moment because I don't want to relinquish too many of my death company and too many of my sanguinary guard, and I don't want to have to get rid of an entire support character to facilitate more of this in my army. But just that small amount just gives me a little bit of security. It just slows the Drukhari down enough, and it just helps keep me in the game that little bit longer. And remember, the Drukhari, they, as I've said before, and as is very apparent to most people, is they cannot win a battle of attrition. They need to get the job done quickly. And if they don't get that job done quickly, you're going to hit them hard with a counterpunch, and you're going to fracture their army and, you know, power drive over them, and you'll take the initiative and win the game. So, very straightforward. You know, it may seem very old-fashioned. Obviously, you don't have to necessarily use rhinos if you only have Primaris, or if you're not an Astartes player, you might be an orc with trucks or battle wagons, who knows. But go out, give this a go. If you're going against a Drukhari player, if you know you've got a match set up against a Drukhari player, playtest a couple of transports, see how it works for you, and get back to me, because it's been working for me, and I'm very confident it'll work for you guys. Just think about it. You know, final thing, we talked about the match, you know, probably kill 3 Primaris Marines. Well, that same raider goes against your transport. It's wounding on 4s instead of 3s, because it would be wounding on 5s, because you're toughness 7, it's strength 4. You're still AP -2, so you're still going to lose, you know, 2/3 of your saves, but you're taking less, a significant chunk less. So those 7 hits, instead they're only going to get probably 3 wounds through on you, maybe 4 if they're lucky. And of those, you'll probably still only save 1, maybe 2 if you're lucky, but it's 2 or 4 wounds to a rhino. It's nothing, it's a waste of time, and they're right up in your face, ready to be assaulted by and shot apart by the contents of those rhinos. It takes like 3 raiders to crack open a rhino, and then you've got your contents inside that they then have to start putting work into. Their 5 support units, maybe they've taken out your heavy support, but they're right in the face of the contents of these transports. So it really, really blunts that. And it doesn't matter whether they're using racks with liquefy guns or any other loadout on any other unit. The fact of the matter is that they want you to have heavy elite units on objectives. They want that. They want you exposed, because that's when they can stab you in the back. Hide in your metal boxes and you're good to go. You have the initiative. You take the initiative back, and you can get out when you want. You can act when you want. So just, you know, food for thought there, guys. So let me know what you think. As always, I really appreciate your, you know, input in the comment section below. But I'll leave this video there. So I hope you found this video interesting. I hope you found it entertaining. Thank you very much for your time. This has been the Scholar Progenium. Goodbye.